How's it going, everyone? We are here for some Week 10 kicker takes with Denny. How's it going, Denny?
Let's just say that
Actually, yeah, wait. Actually, I'm not going to ask you how's it going. We're just going to get right into the takes. No, I'm just kidding.
I was gonna say I will just say that week 10 kicker takes will make me feel slightly better than I feel.
We are in a strange time, and anyhow, so I guess in terms of this week, are there obvious kicker plays, or is it more kind of like I see your first guy here is Stephen Gostkowski. Um, is it like an obvious top play, or is it a little tougher?
Uh, you know, I think that we've gotten to the point with Gostowski where he, is likely not to have high ownership, which is a weird situation, right? Because we're so used to him being the kicker in fantasy over the past couple of years. But I mentioned in the article he has 1.8 field goal tries per game this season, which puts him at 23rd in per game opportunity in the NFL. That's really bad. I mean, usually if a kicker is attempting 1.8 ish field goals, we're not even paying attention to them. But the potential remains there because Vegas point totals correlate with kicker success, fantasy production, and New England once again has a really high total. I mean, they always will, I guess, as long as Brady is alive and breathing. The Patriots have a 28-point total, and the matchup is there. Seattle is giving up 2.4 weekly field goal attempts, which is the sixth most in the NFL. I am probably not paying up for kicker the way that lineups are shaking out for me on FanDuel. But if you have some extra cash, I think that Gostowski makes probably a better GPP play, I would say, than cash game.
Yeah, and we were talking before the show about David Johnson, and I mean, I think that's really gonna be a big, talking point for the rest of your lineup because that's over 9K right off the bat. So I think you're trying to save where you can. Um, but yeah, I mean, I don't mind Patriots this week, and we've kind of been conditioned to think the Seahawks are this Hall of Fame defense, and they're still really good.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't quite think they're as good as they have been the past few years.
Yeah, and I think it's easy to get wrapped up in a matchup and say we must avoid these players because this defense has been good. I think that it's different when you play a really potent offense like the Patriots.
Agreed. In terms of mid-price plays, you threw out Josh Lambo here against the Dolphins. I think we're all kind of looking at this San Diego offense and going, really? How? But, it happens every week, seemingly.
Right. Yeah. I mean, they have all these cast-offs doing great things, and then obviously the greatest running back to ever put on cleats, Melvin Gordon, is leading the charge. So the Chargers have the third highest point total of the week, which is good for all of their players in this matchup against the Dolphins. A Dolphins defense that, by the way, has struggled on the road. More so than when they're at home. The Dolphins are giving up 2.5 field goal attempts per game, which is a good number. It's not among the tops in the league, but it's a decent number. And maybe more importantly, that this maybe transcends matchup is that Lambeau is sixth in the league in both field goal attempts per game and field goals made per game. So I mean that's way up there. He's borderline #elite, I believe.
Yeah, he's been doing really well this year, and at 47, I mean that's certainly closer to the minimum than paying up. So
Yeah.
that extra 300-400 is a pretty big deal.
Yeah, it's significant. I was looking at some kickers at 48 and 4,900, but I decided to highlight Lambeau because of that, in part because of that price difference between him and Gostowski, who is the top price kicker. $400 is obviously, as significant. I see Lambeau as having a really solid floor, which is not something you can say about every kicker.
Yeah, and especially in tournaments, if you aren't getting that 7, 8 points at least, you're really pushing your luck. I
Yeah.
mean, it's
Yeah.
the same thing with defense, but
Right.
those two positions are actually really, really important. So I agree with that. In terms of low price plays, you highlighted Nick Novak, Houston kicker against the Jags. Uh,
Yeah.
give us your take here.
Yeah. So I feel like Novak is a weekly addition to this column and it's in this show. And it's partly because his price never changes. I mean, he's posted several solid outings over the past month, and he's still minimum priced. So I'm going to keep going back to the well, especially against the Jaguars, who allow more fantasy production to field goal kickers than anybody in the league, and it's not all that close. They allow 14.2 fantasy points per game to kickers,
Wow.
and they along the reason for that is not necessarily that they're being gouged through the air, which is something we've talked about on this show. Passing yards correlating well with fantasy production. It's because they're giving up a lot of red zone opportunities, and we saw that last week with Kansas City, who continually pushed the ball well inside the red zone and couldn't finish the deal. And then Cairo Santo, who we talked about, would go ahead and kick the field goal. He had a nice day. So I just feel remiss if I don't mention, honestly, if I don't mention the kicker who's playing Jacksonville on any given week. And so that's why Novak is in a lot of my lineups.
That's a cool little nugget there. 14.2 fantasy points per
Yeah.
game. So
Yeah.
that's a ton. Yeah, I can't remember seeing a kicker on red zone more than Cairo Santos last week. It was pretty incredible.
Every time they that game was the game was horrendous, but every time they went back to that game, it was like, and Santos
Yeah.
from 30 and Santos from
Yeah.
32. I was like, oh, okay, well, we'll take it.
And Houston is that perfect storm of they have good players, so they're gonna move the ball, but then they have Brock Osweiler in the red zone.
Yeah.
So it's like they're gonna stall out. So
Yeah.
I think that's a good call. Um, Will Lutz against the Broncos. This is a game I looked at earlier in the week and I just closed the tab and I like went back again and looked and I closed it again. I have no idea what to think of this Broncos defense anymore. I was confident in them and now I just don't know. So
Yeah, it's yeah, I was trying to do some, looking at their defensive splits, at home, away, when they're favored, when they're underdogs, and I can't really figure it out either. But Lutz is becoming a good option, which is weird for a New Orleans kicker because over the past 3 seasons, I think I mentioned this in a kicker column 3 or 4 weeks ago. Drew Brees' offense have been so good inside the red zone, and particularly, inside the 10-yard line, that field goal kickers for the Saints have not had opportunities in past seasons.
hmm.
But Lutz he's getting those opportunities. And the fact that Denver is, whatever their defense is, which obviously we don't quite know right now, they've allowed 2.3 field goal attempts per game, and Lutz is averaging 2.3 field goal attempts per game. So I think that the likelihood of him getting 2, possibly 3 cracks at a field goal in this game is good, and best of all, he's minimum priced.
Certainly. And yeah, and the good thing about Drew Brees at home is we know even if he has 3 interceptions, he's just going to keep plugging away.
Yeah.
And with the Broncos offense like this, I think those field goals are going to be important. So yeah, I think those are two pretty interesting min plays, comparatively speaking to most weeks.
Yeah, Lutz, I would guess, I guess I could be wrong, but I would guess that Lutz will have a much higher ownership this week than Novak. So that's partly why I would lean Novak, because I believe that they have similar prospects according to their matchups. But I wouldn't, I wouldn't tell you not to play Lutz. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I think that's fair. As far as, is there anything else you want to get out there before we sign off for the week?
No, I think that I am fresh out of kicker talk.
Okay. If you want to check out this article, certainly head to dailyfantasycafe.com and check that out. Obviously, follow Denny on Twitter, cdcarter13. If you like what we're doing on these videos, certainly give us a like and subscribe. I would appreciate that. And, we would appreciate that. So, as always, thanks for tuning in, and we will see you guys next week.